Of the Spanish adventurers, the most persistent was a bold explorer named Antonio de Berrio. He set out with 700 horsemen, but the route was difficult and exhausting. The natives usually hostile, and many of the men and horses died or were slain. The surviving men were so weary and eager to return home that Berrio was forced to give up his quest. He then settled on the island of Trinidad as governor. The next to try his luck was the 40-year-old Walter Raleigh, who attempted the adventure which Berrio had failed to see through. Raleigh had sent out various expeditions but had never crossed the ocean himself. He now decided to seek this land of gold. In February 1595, he set sail from Plymouth with a fleet of 5 well-supplied vessels, taking with him about 100 gentlemen adventurers in addition to the crew members. Raleigh's fleet was captured soon after and was quickly deprived of its cargo. About 2 months later, Raleigh sighted the hills of Trinidad. His eyes rested for the first time on the shores of that new world in which he had so long taken a keen interest. Governor Berrio here treated Raleigh with every courtesy, talking freely about his expedition and giving Raleigh a good deal of very useful information. Raleigh learnt that his ships could not be taken up the Orinoco on account of the sandbanks at its mouth and its dangerous channels. He therefore felt it necessary to leave the ships at Trinidad and cross to the mainland in the boats he had brought with him. 100 men were chosen for the journey, while the others were left to guard the fleet. An old galley, a barge, a ship's boat, and 2 wherries carried them, along with a young native pilot who was familiar with the coast. But stormy weather hindered the voyagers, and they were glad enough to enter one of the mouths of the river and escape the seething ocean. But here new troubles surrounded them that Raleigh described later in his account of the expedition. He wrote, "If God had not sent us help, we might have wandered a whole year in that labyrinth of rivers, ere we have found any way, and if we went by the sun or compass, hoping thereby to go directly one way or the other, yet that way also we were carried in a circle among multitudes of islands. Every island was so bordered with big trees, as no man could see any farther than the breadth of the river or length of the branch. The pilot proved to be useless in the maze of waterways. But they were fortunate to meet 3 other natives, who became friendly when they found that they had nothing to fear from the strange white men. One of them was an old man who knew the river thoroughly. Presents and kind words induced him to guide the voyagers past the obstacles. Resting that night on a little knoll on the wooden banks of the stream, they were off again early the next morning. The river was still swift and violent, and the banks were so crowded with trees and high reeds that they could not land, and were almost stifled from the closeness of the air. After 4 hard and weary days, the explorers reached a smooth channel and found they could proceed more easily. But the tropical heat grew more oppressive each day. They began to complain bitterly, and Raleigh had to use all his powers of persuasion in order to induce them to go on. Yet the country was in many ways beautiful. Here and there the woods ceased, and broad plains spread out, covered with luxuriant herbage, amid which rose at intervals groves of beautiful trees. Graceful deer would come down to the water's edge and gaze fearlessly on the travelers with their big, soft eyes. On the banks of the rivers, says Raleigh, were fruits good to eat, flowers too, and variety of trees. We refreshed ourselves many times with the fruits of the country, and sometimes with fowls and fish. We saw birds of all colors, some carnation, some crimson, orange, tawny, purple, and so on, a sight great to behold.